What is up, YouTube? Hello, Party Parrots. We got brand new Datamines following a gigantic patch that finally introduced character mastery into Marvel Snap, and this is the most excited I may have ever been in Marvel Snap. We got a great new feature that looks like a ton of fun to deal with. I spent almost an hour just going through all my cards, looking at all the new backgrounds I had, but we also got insane Datamines. By my count, if you're including things like spells and cards that are generated by other cards, we have over 20 new cards to cover in this data mine video. So I do not want to hold this up. We need to jump right into it. Otherwise, this video is going to be like an hour long. So really quickly, just brief reminder that this is a data mine. And that means all of these cards can and may change. And you're going to see that because these cards we're going to start with were all data mined last month. And almost all of them have been completely reworked. A lot of them are very different. A lot of them kept some of their similar function, but some of them were completely reworked outright. So again, huge reminder, these cards may, and some of them absolutely will change, which probably might be for the better because some of these cards are absolutely insane. But before we get into that, just again, thanks for watching the video. Leave a like. Let me know what cards you're excited for. Also, keep a lookout. I think we now have enough information in these data mines to break down the next 6 months of Snap. That's a video I did about 6 months ago, actually, and we got completely correct all the way up to the 1 million BC Avengers. So keep an lookout for that. But let's break it down first, starting with Agamotto, the Season Pass card, dropping next month in March. So our Season Pass card is Agamotto. He is a 5/10 with the game start effect of shuffle 4 Ancient Arcana into your deck. And this card is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think this card is going to be incredibly powerful. And before we even break down what the 4 Ancient Arcana are, which look incredibly exciting, they have some crazy powers, there are some things to note with Agamotto. One is that he is bringing with him a brand new mechanic called Banish. We have no idea what Banish is, but it is actually in the game right now. If you look next to the destroyed and discard pile, there is also the banished pile. While we don't have any confirmation what it is, I think we can make some educated guesses, which again are just that, educated guesses. They could be completely wrong, but my guess is that these will be a place where it is not destroyed and it is not discarded, so that there's a third way to kind of interact with things so as to not like trigger destroy. So all of these cards, these Ancient Arcana, are going to have 0 power and banish with a powerful effect and then banish themselves. And what I think that is why it's there is because they don't want it to trigger things like death. They don't want you to be able to play like the 5/0 Ancient Arcana, does a really powerful thing, also gets destroyed, making your death cheaper, pulling an angel out of your deck, being more. They were like, we don't want that. It'll just banish itself. Same thing with like the discard. It's not like, you play this and then it gets discarded, so Hela can't bring it back. There's some cards in the data mine as well that look like other spells. Flames of the Fall Teen is there, so maybe we don't have all of these spells yet, but right now there are 4. So might be all of them. We also have like Astral Projection, which might be coming in future months. So again, look out for this Banish mechanic. My guess is that it's going to be somewhere else. There could also be a new way, I could see us getting Hades, or in Marvel, he's actually called Pluto, and it being like, a 2/2 ongoing, cards that are destroyed and discarded go into the Banish. So just, like a hate card for destroy or a hate card for discard, and Fenris Wolf. Brand new mechanic, and we have no confirmation, so did want to shout that out. But before we even break those down again, because all of these spells have 0 power, at least in the data mine, and that means they will work great with cards like Quinjet. They will work great with Ravonna Renslayer, and even a card like Angela, because they will banish themselves. So my guess is, again, leaving the board, especially since they have 0 power. You can play them onto like an Angela, trigger it, and leave that spot open. But let's actually break down what these spells are, because they are juicy. So let's see just how powerful these effects are. First up, we have the Bolts of Balthok. This is an 3/0. Remember, that means it will be reduced by cards like Quinjet, Ravonna Renslayer. With the on reveal, next turn you get +4 energy and then banish this. So again, probably means you play this, it won't stay on the board. go away, but +4 energy is a ton. If you play this on like turn 5, no, you will not be adding any energy, but this will enable some insane combos. I mean, with +4 energy, if you have any extra energy, you could play MODOK and Hela on the same turn. You know, a 5-drop and a 6-drop, just like with a Luna Snow or after Corvus Glaive. Just a lot of crazy synergies. And we've seen from Wiccan how much even 2 extra energy on the final turn can enable you to play Ajax and Hazmat. Just some absolutely crazy things. Images of the Icon is another spell then that he has, which is a 4/0 of on reveal, transform your other cards here into copies of the highest power one, then banish this. I mean, this card is obviously insane. If you play, say, Images of Icon onto, you know, your last turn of the game with that maybe energy from Bolts of Balthok, you can play this and a 6-drop, turn your other 2 cards into a Magneto. That's 36 power. You can also do crazy, crazy shenanigans of like, you know, Hazmat that we were saying before with Luke Cage, where you essentially create your own Bar Sinister. Just crazy combos. Now, actually breaking down what these spells are, one thing that I didn't mention that I really do want to, because I know everyone's seeing these and thinking, this is insane. And yes, it is, but keep in mind that these are not stones, right? One thing that is really good about the Infinity Stones that Thanos puts into your deck is that they will draw you cards. So even though your deck becomes less consistent because you're adding 6 cards to it, 1, Thanos stays in your hand, and 2, those stones will help you churn through your deck so that you regularly end up with a deck as small as, you know, a non-stone deck. This has none of that ability. This is much more like playing Thor or Beta Ray Bill without Mighty Jane Foster, which is, if you've ever played that, can feel very awkward when you have like going into the last turn and there's 5 or 6 cards still in your deck and you really want to draw only one of them if there's one spell. So that increased inconsistency, I think, is going to be something that people overlook when they evaluate this card. I mean, I still think this card's a 5 out of 5, but I do want to point that out, that that is going to be probably the main drawback, besides these cards having no actual power. But let's break down the next 2 spells. We have Temporal Manipulation, which is a 1/0. On reveal, give Agamotto +3 power and put him into your hand if he's not in play. So this one does kind of draw you a card. I think this is actually going to be one of the better spells, even though I think they're all really strong, just because it gives you that card draw, gives you that little bit of more consistency, puts the Agamotto in your hand, and a 5/13 Agamotto is very strong. Even a 5/10. The only 5/10 that we just have in the game is Arrow. And Arrow actually sees a lot of play, not only in like Scream decks for its ability, but in like Surtur decks, just because it's a consistent 5/10. And we do not have a lot of those in the game. Usually you have to jump through some hoops. So Agamotto being a 5/10, a 5/13, getting to draw in your hand for only 1 energy, that is really strong. I really like this spell. And then we have Winds of Watu. This is a 2/0. On reveal, afflict an enemy card here with -5 power and move it to the right. Then banish this. So, I mean, just thinking of this as being a 2/5 is so strong. I mean, that's Lizard stats with no downside. Yes, they can Luke Cage it. Yes, you know, maybe you hit like a Vulture and they get, you know, some little bit of value off of that. But in general, I mean, this is just a 2 -5 that doesn't even take up a spot. Plus, moving a card to the right, if they're like playing into an Iron Patriot lane, you know, if they play like Quicksilver, then Iron Patriot on it and play into like Gladiator or something, if you manage, that means on turn 4, if they play something middle, you could end up clogging them. That has a little bit of clog synergy. Really powerful card. I think that Agamotto is going to be, without a doubt, the most exciting card of next month, especially after this next card we're going to cover did get a little bit nerfed, I think. So let's talk about Eson. So yes, we have Eson, and he has changed to a 6/9, nice, with the ability after each turn, put a card from your hand that didn't start in your deck here. And I gave this card a 2 out of 5. To me, this card was very much a disappointment. I think the original version was probably way too strong to release, but this version just really doesn't do it for me. One, it's kind of an each turn do something, but on a 6-drop, which we really haven't seen, because unless you're ramping, that means it's only going to trigger once. You know, I mean, you can play magic, maybe you get a second trigger out of it. So you probably have to play this with ramp. But I think the biggest problem that this card has, and why I gave it a 2-star, is that most of the playable, or at least really good cards that add cards to your hand, cards like Iron Patriot, the Hood, Hawkeye Kate Bishop, even Maria Hill that's seeing more play now, all of these cards are really cheap. You play a card and then it adds this cheap kind of filler. Iron Patriot has heavy cost reduction. All these cards are really strong because it's so cheap and help you fill in your curve as you're playing whatever your main game plan is. And this is like the opposite of that, because this wants you to be playing big things, cards with a lot of power that you can pull out of your hand. Now, that being said, that we do actually have some cards that work well with Eson, and why I don't think this card is just like stone unplayable or terrible. Obviously, I think this card is probably going to be a must-have in Arishem because 1, that deck has ramp. You can play this on turn 5 and get like 2 procs out of it. 2, that card generates 12 random cards, so you know this could be pulling great 6 drops or even 4 or 5, even 3 drops that you otherwise can't really fit into your curve. Just pulling them out of your hand, playing them would be very strong. So I do think that this card's probably going to go really well into an Arishem deck, which I think is going to probably be disappointing to people because while it is very thematic that both of the Celestials go together, also I think people were really hoping that this would be like an Arishem level card that completely changes how we build decks, a whole new archetype, and not just sliding right into Arishem, so kind of disappointing there. The other card that I think this card really has a chance with is Nick Fury. And I think that's maybe why this card is so low for me, is because Nick Fury is not a very good card. But if you are creating 6 drops, then Eson can pull those 6 drops out of your hand. I mean, that is a very powerful effect. And maybe this card is just missing, you know, that Dr. Faustus as like a 1/1 with an on reveal, put up 6/20 Hellhound into your hand. You know, something that generates these big cards that we really don't have right now, because I think they've kind of realized that generating cheap cards can actually make those cards good. I mean, even like Snowguard doesn't see a ton of play because it's just hard to fit a 3-drop into your curve, especially when you have to be building a curve anyways. So we'll see about Eson. I think that this card isn't terrible. It kind of strikes me as like a Namora level card where you'll probably be able to build a deck around it. You'll be able to get to infinite. It'll be fine. Like, the deck will be definitely playable, but it's by no means a must-have and not really going to be shaking up the meta too much from my read of him. Then we have Khonshu, and we finally got the text for this card. He was in the Datamines last month, and not to toot my own horn, but I did kind of perfectly call out how Khonshu was going to work in the last video, so I know that's why you guys come here, is for my impeccable game knowledge and just how absolutely smart I am predicting these kind of things. No, but it did feel good to get that right. But let's actually break down what Khonshu does now, because he is one of the most interesting cards. This is my favorite card in the entire Datamine because I think this card has a ton of potential in maybe a ton of different decks. I gave him 5 stars, but let's break down exactly why. So there's 3 Khonshus that I have out here, and that's because there's kind of 3 Khonshus. The first one is 6/5. It has when discarded, return in its next phase. And it has the on reveal, so if you play it, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 5. So how this card's going to work is if you just play out 6/5 Khonshu, it'll work much like Ghost Rider does, reanimating a card you discarded, giving it 5 power. So if you hit something like a Gore or an Iron Man, that can be a lot of power. And it's really nice that it's resurrecting to another location, because something with, like, say, Ghost Rider, because it's in that same location, since this is a 6 cost, if this is the only card you play, you're then only going to be adding power, only contesting that 1 power, which would be a really big downside. But adding to another location means that this is 5 power here, 5 power there, and as you see, potentially even way more, because when you discard it, it'll go to its next phase, from Khonshu to Khonshu Waxing. This is now a 6/7 with basically the same ability, but now it'll resurrect that card with 7 power in that right lane, or in that other lane. So if you bring back Iron Man or Gore, it'll have 7 power, which can be really big, especially if you're kind of building around it. And then finally, we have 612 Khonshu in the full moon phase, where if you discarded the last one, you get this 612 version that will have on reveal resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 12. So if you get a 612 Khonshu resurrecting a 512 Iron Man, that's 24 power in that other lane. That's 12 power there. That's 36 power. That is a lot of power. And I actually think this card might be super versatile. One thing I really want to stress with this card is I do not think anyone knows how this card's going to play. This card is unlike any other card we've seen, and it requires a lot of different things. You're going to want to be discarding Khonshu a lot. You're going to want to be having cards that you can resurrect with a lot of power, like, you know, not Infinite, because that might actually be nerfing it. So what decks are going to actually want this? Let's break it down. I think the most obvious place people are going to start with is Hela. Hela is really nice because current builds of Hela are actually playing Iron Man and Gore because they're like 5 drops that can, you know, and 6 drops, and Hela works by, you know, resurrecting cards at different costs now. So maybe you want to play this in your Hela decks. I think I'm definitely going to be trying him there. Maybe though you play him in decks that don't have Hela. Unclear exactly what, because what I really like about this is it's almost like a backup Hela. It can resurrect. I mean, if it resurrects, let's say Iron Man or Gore, that could be as good as two Hela resurrects. Because if Hela just brings back like Iron Man and Gore in the same lane, well, bringing back Iron Man with 12 power is basically the same thing. So could be really good there, and plus it's going to have more power than Hela. When we saw Hela get that buff from 7 to 9 power, a lot of people realized how big that was, being able to drop that 9 power. So I really like it there. But one problem that Hela has is Hela decks don't actually discard a ton of cards, so it's kind of weird because you want to discard Khonshu like 2 times, but you also want to be discarding other cards to reanimate with Khonshu. So maybe he works really good as a backup Hela. Maybe you don't even play him in the Hela decks. Like, you kind of build it a bit more around Khonshu because you can't discard Khonshu, and the 6/5 version that's reanimating a, you know, 5 power blade isn't going to cut it. So that's why I'm like, maybe it goes in Hela, maybe it goes in slightly different decks. One place that really interests me is one deck that used to use a ton of discarding was old Hela Swarm decks. Way back when, years ago now, when Hela was first there, we saw like 10 Hela bringing back Swarm, because actually every time you discard Swarm, that Swarm goes to your discard pile, then gets copies added to your hand. And same thing. So if you discard like 4 Swarms, you can actually then play out all those copies of it, play Hela or play Khonshu, bring back those Swarms. If you played like Corvus Glaive to discard the Swarm and Khonshu, and then MODOK to discard more Swarms and Khonshu, then Hela could, you know, bring back all those Swarms. Khonshu could just bring back like a 12 power Swarm, and you get to play all the Swarms. Could be something absolutely there. One last place that I really like this is potentially in like the Odd Hawk decks with cards like Silver Samurai or Moon Knight, kind of as a last turn card where maybe you go like Fenris Wolf into Moon Knight, you hit your Khonshu, discard a card from their hand, play the 6/7 Khonshu, reanimate something, Fenris Wolf reanimate something. I think there could be a lot of potential there. Like I said, I think if you ask 30 different people how to build Khonshu, you're going to get 15 different decks, and I don't know if that means there's going to be 15 amazing Khonshu decks or one amazing deck or somewhere in between, but I'm really excited to try this card out. Now we have the Starbrand, who is now a 3/10, yes, an actual 3/10, with the ongoing ability, your opponent has +3 power at each other location. So this is almost like a reverse Mr. Fantastic, where it's not adjacent, it's just all of your other locations. Your opponent basically gets +3 power, you lose 3 power in that. So to me, this card is one, just absolutely huge. We have never seen a 3/10. Even Gladiator, which can potentially just like lose you a lane outright by pulling an Infinite, is only a 3/8. Again, this is a 3/10, but with a really bad downside. I mean, like I said, it's a reverse Mr. Fantastic. So how are you actually going to play Starbrand? I give this a 4/5 because I think this card will actually be very powerful. And there are a lot of ways to actually turn it off. You can play 0, like if on turn 4 you play 0 and Starbrand, that's 13 power spread out over 2 lanes, when otherwise some of these other decks that are playing like Typhoid Mary, if you're playing like a Surtur deck or a Sauron deck, you know, this is just better, essentially. This is a better 0 target because it's just cheaper. So then Sauron's obviously great. Surtur can be absolutely great. With this is just a 310 there. And then Enchantress coming down, taking out your opponent's ongoings, removing this drawback, I think will be absolutely key. One thing I do think that is very important to note is, besides zeroing it and removing the text with like a Sauron or Enchantress, there isn't another way to get around this drawback. Other times we've seen these kind of big, you know, Atumas, your Typhoid Marys. Like Atuma, you can play like Armor in that deck, or just play another Scar in that lane. So there are ways to avoid that destroy trigger. Or with Typhoid Mary, you can play Luke Cage, or if you only play like one big card in there, like the Surtur, you know, it's not as big of a downside. There is no way to get around this without just turning it off. So you kind of have to play these Saurons, these zeros, to remove this ability, because otherwise this is a huge downside. I do think that it is still really good because the upside is absolutely there for this card. I love that this is, I think, the card Sauron's been needing, and I think Surtur will absolutely love it too. No surprise there, but like I said, the downside is really big, so definitely keep an eye on that when you are building your Starbrand decks. Next up, we have Firehair, who has gotten reworked to being a 2/3 with the ability, when one of your cards is destroyed, this uses that card's on reveal. And this to me is such an exciting card. This is almost what I wish Joaquin Torres would have been, where this card can just copy any of your on reveal cards when you're destroying them. And kind of why I gave it a 4.5 star is, while I think this card is incredibly powerful, in some ways it could almost be a 4 cost or a Wong for 2 costs instead of 4, where it's going to be able to copy your on reveals. It is important to note that you do have to be destroying those on reveals. So what decks can reliably do that? Well, there are a couple that I think would absolutely love this, because these stats are so good for this effect. Just play this 2/3 out and just kind of let it sit there and accrue value. So cards like Hood and Korg that go in like Misery Shells, we've slowly seen more and more Misery as the months have gone on, where the people are realizing how powerful that kind of repeat all your on reveals is. This would mean if you play like the Hood and Korg in a lane, and then on turn 2 play this, and then turn 4 play Misery, you'll get all of those cards' abilities. You'll get a demon. Then you will Firehair when they're destroyed from the Misery, get another demon, and then Misery will trigger it, getting a 3rd demon. Just those 3 cards. That's 3 demons in your hand, and what a consistent way to do it. You can also do things like Killmonger, which a lot of these decks were already playing cards like Killmonger to make like death cheaper. This is just the perfect synergy card for it. So I absolutely love this in any deck that wants like Misery or Killmongering your own Hood. Then we also have Destroy. I think this card is actually kind of interesting in Destroy, where you can play, say, like an X-23 out, and then you destroy it with a Carnage. It ends up landing left, and then you like can then Venom your Carnage, and then the Firehair will trigger that Carnage ability where the X-23 went. So when your cards kind of get split up, this could almost maybe trigger it again. Will it be the best slot there? I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's definitely interesting there. And then the other card that I think has some very unique synergy with this is actually Arnim Zola, because a lot of the times with Arnim Zola, you want to be destroying a big on-reveal card. A card like Black Panther. I've seen Arnim Zola like Dakin builds, Arnim Zola, Ares, all of these really big on-reveal cards that Arnim Zola gives you more copies, more on-reveals. This is like a 3rd version of that for your Dakin deck, a 3rd Black Panther. And yeah, you know, it's not going to be getting as big. Will it see play there? Maybe that's me being more hopeful, but I think there's definitely some interesting things here. And pretty much any on-reveal that comes out, I'm going to be looking at Firehair for the next year at least, thinking maybe this will be a Firehair card. So I absolutely love this design. 4.5 stars out of me. Let's break down the next. And our final card of the March season, before we break down April, is yes, we have an entire another season to cover. please don't go anywhere. I'm going to try and keep this, short and still give you guys all the information. But we have the first Ghost Rider. And this card is Datamines to not be in Spotlight caches, so it might be like a game mode card that we're getting next month. He is a 2/6, so very good stats. With the on reveal, discard the lowest power card from your hand. So pretty much identical to Silver Samurai, but only hitting your hand. Then you remove that card's power from this. So this is some kind of like a Silver Samurai your own hand, but with the downside of it removing that power from the first Ghost Rider, but also then with the upside of if you discard like Iron Man, which we've already seen decks that are using Silver Samurai like Hela playing like Iron Man and Gore, these very low power cards that they want to bring back anyways, which I mean, in those decks, this is just a better Colleen Wing. This is like a 2/6. Even in like a bad situation, where if this hits, let's say, Scorn, and you discard the Scorn, you play this on turn 2, it removes 2 power from it because the Scorn had 2. This is just Colleen Wing. I mean, it is just another redundant Colleen Wing, which I think is a really powerful place for it to be. And that is not even including if this card works with like Green Goblin or Hobgoblin to go up in power. If discarding a Green Goblin brings this up to a 2/9, and then you can play like Hela and get back that Green Goblin to fly over at your opponent's side, I think there is 1000% going to be a deck built around that synergy of Ghost and these negative powers. Unclear if that's how it's going to work. Maybe it'll just be, it won't add power. It'll just won't remove any. It'll still be really good. I mean, that's a 2/6. That's Maximus stats for no downside, probably even upside for what your deck is doing. So I absolutely think there's going to be a deck for the first Ghost Rider. But let's break down next month's season, starting with Captain Carter. Our season pass card for April then is Datamine to be Captain Carter, and this is bringing on a new What If season to Marvel Snap. So from the Disney Plus TV show, a lot of the cards, or all of the cards, are from that show. And starting with Captain Carter, and this one seems like a strong one to me. She is a 4/2 with the ongoing ability, your other cards in the back row here gain this card's power. So obviously this is bringing in a brand new mechanic, which we're going to see on some other cards also coming out this season with rows, which I think is going to consider like the first 2 cards you play in a lane are going to be the front row, and then the 3rd and 4th will be the back row. So this card immediately speaks to me. This seems very similar, at least in power level, to like Gwenpool or Galacta, which are also like these kind of 4/6 that give you more stats, especially if you can build around them, you can get a ton of stats. That seems like what this card's going to be doing, especially even in a card with a deck like Gwenpool, or with a deck like Galacta. If you play Galacta and then you play this, then instead of being, a 4/2 giving 4 power, this will be a 4/5 giving 10 power, being a 4/15. So cards like Galacta, Forge, Nakia, all of these great cards that we kind of have seen that, hand buff deck, whatever you want to call it, like Surfer type decks, really want to play these Forge effects, these Agony effects. And this is another really good payoff enabler that can also kind of is a payoff where it pays, is a payoff for playing a card like Forge, but then can also be an enabler for like a card like Lasher, where if you play this on turn 4, and then let's say it has 2 power from Forge, and then you drop Lasher behind it, then that Lasher is going to be getting +4 power. You could activate it. It's really cool synergy. I'm really excited for this card. I think there's going to be a lot to build around this card. I think it's just kind of going to be this generically powerful card like Galacta and Gwenpool are. So I'm really looking forward to Captain Carter dropping in April. And normally I go in order that the Spotlight caches release, so that you guys kind of have an idea where you can kind of put yourself in how the month's going to go. But I have to cover this card next. This is Infinity Ultron. This is Ultron who beat the Avengers and claimed all of the Infinity Stones for himself. This card is absolutely insane. He is a 5/6 with the on reveal of adding 2 Ultron Infinity Stones to your hand. I had to give this card 5 out of 5. When you see some of these stones, you want to see how powerful this card is. Now, one thing I do have to say is because Infinity Ultron is a 5-drop, I think he's going to work best with ramp cards like Wiccan, I think, will be one of the most obvious homes for him. And even Luna Snow, cards that can help you get this out on turn 4, because these are not Thanos' stones, so we don't know if they're going to cost 1. But we do know that they are so far datamined to have insane abilities. Like, I'm not even going to hold it up any longer. Let's break down what these stones actually are. Now, we don't actually have art for Ultron's Infinity Stones, so bear with me. I'm just using Thanos' art here, and unfortunately, I'm just going to have to tell you what the actual cost and power are of these cards because of that. And as you'll see, the text is a little bit janky, but I'm going to do my best to, adequately explain what these cards are. But important to note, all of the cards so far are data mined to be 3 costs. That is totally subject to change, though. We have no idea if this will actually release as 3 costs, but the first one is the Space Stone, which is a 3/4 with the on reveal, move the lowest power enemy card to here, to this Space Stone's location. So this is going to be a 3/4 that'll pull the lowest power card here. So it can be really disruptive. Then we have the Ultron Reality Stone, which going to be add a copy of itself here and set its power equal to the Reality Stone. So we'll see what the actual text ends up looking like. I think this is supposed to kind of mimic the drones that Ultron generates, but I mean, these are really nice abilities to have, kind of giving very much Hawkeye Kate Bishop effect. But let's go into the next ones because these next stones are insane. We have the Ultron Infinity Stone Time Stone, which is data mined to be a 3/1 with the on reveal, put a card from your hand here. And that is just insane text, especially to see on a 3-drop. I mean, we just saw Eson, who's a 6-drop, pulling only cards that didn't start in your deck down. We've got Red Wing dropping this month, which is, you actually have to move the card for it to do it, which I think is going to be pretty hard to trigger. And this is just on reveal going to pull a card out of your hand. So really powerful time stone here. And then we have the Ultron Infinity Mind Stone, which is a 3/2 with the ongoing, your on reveal abilities here happen twice. So just Wong. This is going to be a 3/2 Wong that you can generate into your hand. And Wong is obviously a very, very powerful effect. So having a Kate Bishop that generates these cards, like I said, I think you're going to want to play this with like Wiccan, Luna Snow, any type of ramp at all, because the sooner you can get these cards down, the better place you're going to be with these insane stones. And for the final 2 stones, we have the Ultron Power Stone with the on reveal double Infinity Ultron's power. This is a 3/2, but with that on reveal, you will have already played the Ultron because of, that's how you generate the stones. So this will be a get you 6 more power, and if you're using, stone, we were just talking about that Mind Stone Wong, this can double it, then double it again. That's 6, 12, 18, plus it already has 2. That's 20 power just for 3. I mean, you can really see how these stones are going to be able to come together in really cool, really fun ways. And then the final one, the Infinity or the Ultron Infinity Soul Stone, is a 3/3 with the on reveal for each location you have, each full location you have, give a friendly card there +2 power. So that's really going to, want you to put as many cards as you can. But even if you fill just 2 locations, let's say you decide to throw that 3rd one, play your stones into that last lane there, into those first 2, then that will be 3/3, 3/5, 3/7. It's an on reveal. It can trigger twice with the Mind Stone. Just really cool synergies. Absolutely love this. Hopefully, if you're disappointed with the Eson change between Agamotto and Ultron Infinity Stones, these cards will hopefully make up for it, because I am so excited for these. Our first card coming in the Spotlight caches, though, is Goliath. And this is a 2/1 with the ongoing ability of +1 power for each other ongoing you have in play. I gave this card 4.5 out of 5 stars. This might be a 5-star card. It was really hard not to give it a 5, because we've had cards like Spectrum, which are an on reveal for ongoing decks. We've had cards like Gore the God Butcher, which are ongoings for on reveals, payoffs for that. This is a ongoing payoff for ongoing decks, which is really hard. I mean, you kind of have to go to Onslaught, and even that only works in 1 lane, so it can kind of be hard. But this is just going to be all of your ongoing cards will buff Goliath. I would be shocked if this releases as a 2-1, because so far as a 2-1, I mean, if you play out even, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, if you're playing like a Spectrum deck, it really won't be that hard. This will be like a 2-8, 2-9 even with these other cards. And cards like Captain America Sam Wilson, that's going to be 2 ongoings. That makes this a 2-3 right there. You play Captain America, Captain Carter, like those 3-4 cards just shoot Goliath up. Really powerful card. And that's not even mentioning cards like Moonstone, which can copy that Goliath, help you win. I mean, this is almost like a better speed, possibly even for some Moonstone decks that are heavy and ongoing. I absolutely love this card. I think this card is going to be super versatile. This might be just the card that ongoings needs. We have a ton of on reveal cards that help with on reveal. We've got like Misery, we've got Wong's, Werewolf by Nights, so many different ways, Gore the God Butcher, to play on reveal. This might really start branching off ongoings instead of just being, okay, if you're building a dedicated ongoing deck, are you playing like Living Tribunal, maybe Spectrum, and maybe Onslaught? That's really been kind of it. But with Goliath, I think we're going to revisit a lot of these ongoing cards. And I love to see this ongoing support because we have kind of had a dearth of ongoing cards lately. So love what they're doing here. Then we have also coming to Spotlight Caches Kahhori, and I didn't actually see her What If episode, so hopefully I'm pronouncing that wrong, although I did see kind of clips from it, and I really like her character. But she is a 4/6 with the on reveal. For each card in your hand, give a friendly card +1 power. And that seems like a decent ability. I give this card 3 out of 5. I think this card, I mean, if everything's right, if you have 7 cards on the board when you play this, and 7 cards in hand, this is a 4/13. That's more than like an Ares, which is really nice. The biggest problem with it is that it kind of requires 2 things. One, you need to be playing a lot of cards out because it might be hard to play this card on turn 6, maybe with Zabu and like Galacta, maybe it ends up being fine, but you're at least going to want to put it at least 7 cards that aren't her. Maybe she triggers herself reading it. I don't think she does. So you'll have 7 more cards on the board. And the hardest part is going to be getting 7 cards in your hand. And we're a long way from Devil Dinosaur being the tyrant that they once were. So maybe this is the exact card because, I mean, a potential 4/13 is a lot of stats. And not just in one location like Ares, but being able to spread that out is very, very nice. I mean, we've seen kind of Bullseye being able to hit so many different of your opponent's cards, 7 with -2. Feels really nice. I mean, that card's borderline broken, so maybe Kahhori will get that, but it does seem harder to trigger. Maybe we've seen Devil Dinosaur come back a little bit when Victoria Hand came out. Maybe this is the exact thing that a deck like that's needing, bringing back out your Snow Guards and your Agent Coulson, Victoria Hands deck because Kahhori is coming. I'm optimistic about this card, but I don't think she's going to be as crazy as some of the other cards coming this season. Then we have the Strange Supreme. He's a 2/0 with the ability give this +2 power whenever it merges. Kind of think Penny Parker. It gets a little bit of a buff whenever you merge. Then it has after each turn, merge one of your cards that didn't start in your deck into this. Then, it'll then get +2 power. So this card seems really crazy to me. It's doing so many different things. I'm going to be really curious to see if this is kind of how it ends up releasing, and if so, what decks play, because it has a very powerful ability, but it's really hard to kind of just look at this card and be like, oh, I know exactly where this goes or what deck. Some things that come out to me immediately is this card seems like a Clog Destroyer. I mean, if you put this in a lane, after every single turn, they have a rock there, nope. Eat the rock, give it +2 power. If you throw this in a lane where they tried to Green Goblin, nope, destroy that Green Goblin or merge into it and then get +2 power. So it's going to be really good against Clog, which is nice. I mean, I'm glad that a card like that exists, but how do you actually build around it? Playing cards like Erishim, maybe Thanos that give you these cards, you have a lot of cards then that you didn't start in your deck so that the Strange Supreme can kind of eat them, if you will, and then be growing. Seems like probably where you're going to want to start there. Maybe cards like Snow Guard, Agent Coulson, Mirage. What really is curious to me is generally like merging a card into him means that he'll, I think, remove the text. So if you like merged like a Starbrand or a Typhoid Mary because that used to be a thing people did with like Venom. You used to like Venom, Typhoid Mary, remove the effect, keep the power. I think this would work that way, but is there a way to really reliably do that? Because you need to have that card not start in your deck, which means you need to generate them. So really unclear. I gave this card 3 out of 5 stars. Maybe that's too high. Maybe it's too low. It just feels really weird. It's doing a lot. It's like kind of counters some decks like Clog. Might fit really well into other decks like maybe the Thanos Stones, but it's really bizarre. I mean, getting +2 power every turn is really nice. So we'll see where this ends up. Either way, it's a very unique ability. If it releases like this, I'm definitely going to be trying them out a ton. And our final Spotlight Cache of April and our final Spotlight Cache card of this video, we have a card that I think is going to excite a lot of people, and that is the Hydra Stomper. This is a 3/1 with the ongoing ability of +1 power for each card you moved this game. This card is super exciting to me because I think a card like this is really going to help a lot of people who just want to play like a kind of traditional move deck. Cards like Heimdall, even like Multiple Man that have kind of fallen by the wayside of these move decks. This card seems like perfectly will complement those cards because very often I've wished for a card like this. Like I play Heimdall on turn 6 and move like 7 or 8 cards. Just that right there, barring any other moves, and you know you're going to be moving other cards in a Heimdall deck with cards like Madam Web, Ghost Spider, Aranya, even moving 1 or 2. But that 8 or 9 power, that makes this a 3/10. Like that's exactly what you need. It can really help grow that last turn. Not to mention if you have like a Vulture growing, anything like that. I think this card is going to absolutely shine in traditional move decks. That being said, though, it's very important to note why I gave this card a 4.5 stars is because it's just any card you move with this deck. So this card could see play in Scream decks. I don't know if Scream would like love this, but it is interesting to note that since it's ongoing, it's not like Scream where like you have to play it on 3 and then start moving stuff for it to trigger. If on turn 6 you play like this in Polaris or this in a Spider-Man, that will trigger. Hydra Stomper will get all those moves that you've done, you know, be like a 3/6, be a 3/7, could work in a deck like that. Now, I don't think it'll work as well in there as Heimdall, but the Scream decks have shown to be very powerful. So maybe they can just kind of fit this in, give it a little bit more power. The rest of the deck can kind of carry Hydra Stomper. We will see. So I'm really excited for this card, and I know a lot of other people are too. But let's break down a couple of cards not coming in Spotlight Caches and possible Series 4 cards coming. We have coming Topaz, who is data mined to be a 3/4 with the ability, after you play a card here, move it to the middle lane. And this card, I can't tell if this card is going to be absolutely busted with like Madam Web in the middle lane, play this in left or right on turn 3, and then you play like Human Torch, Ghost Spider, just start moving it around everywhere. Like, is that as insane as I'm thinking? Or is this card just going to be another like Hercules, where it's 3 is kind of too much for what it's doing? Madam Web was the sweet spot. Maybe this is the card that makes a card like Spider-Man 2099. It could work really well with that Hydra Stomper. You play like this in the right lane, Multiple Man into it. It moves into the middle lane, and then you play Heimdall, move both of those, buff up that Hydra Stomper. There's like a lot of potential here, but we have seen some of these move cards fall flat, and so I'm really unsure where this is going to go. I'm optimistic, and I'm hopeful and excited that we're going to be getting this card, but will it be? I mean, I think this card could go anywhere from, you know, needing to be nerfed to not seeing any play in the move decks, which is a really weird spot to be, but overall, I think it's a really cool design. And for our final 2 cards before we break down the Spotlight Caches that were data mined to be coming, so stay tuned to that if you're interested in that. We have 2 cards that I'm unsure how they're going to release or if this is going to be their final text, but I still want to mention them. First, we have Fan Fei, who's kind of the 1 million BC Iron Fist. She doesn't actually have any art yet, so this is just what she looks like. But she is data mined to be a 4/7 with the activate, move your other cards here away. So another move card, and I mean, that could be really strong. Because it's an activate, you could like play this in the left lane, play Heimdall on turn 6, move a bunch of cards over there, then activate this, throw those cards everywhere. A lot of potential there. 4-drop activates have been kind of needed a lot, but it is a 4/7, so we'll see. It could be a very interesting card. Unsure how it'll actually turn out. And then we have Dum Dum Duggan, a card I love. I love the character Dum Dum Duggan, but he is a 2/2 with the ongoing ability. Your cards in the front row here have +1 power. So there's that card kind of referencing that front row, and I think this card's kind of bad. I mean, it's a 2/4. It works with like, Goliath. It'll give it +1 power, and Moonstone can copy it, but I think there's just better cards to kind of copy there, and it needs to be at least like you need to have at least 2 cards in that lane, maybe even 3, depending how this front and back row works. So I'm not super excited about Dum Dum Dugan, but these cards are a little ways out. We'll actually see when they come out how they release. We've been getting a lot of changes in the data mine now, but thanks again for watching me break down the new cards, and let's check out these spotlight caches. And again, all this information is taken from snap.fan, so if you're looking for your own information on data mines, variants, spotlight caches, snap.fan is my go-to place and where I got all of the information for this, so check them out. Thanks again to them. But let's break this down, these ones. And first we have the last week of March. The reason why I'm mentioning this one is because Cersei was taken out and added with Corvus Glaive, which I think is a good change. I think Corvus Glaive is going to work phenomenally well with Khonshu, so look for that there. And Cersei just got moved to the next week there with Goliath, along with Gwenpool. Cersei, I don't think has been in a Spotlight Cache, so excited to see that. And Gwenpool is a very good card. I think this is going to be a really good week because Goliath is looking very strong, especially if he keeps that 2/1 stat line. Then we have Kahhori, Obsidian, and Hydra Bob dropping the next week. Obsidian and Hydra Bob, both of these are very good cards. I know I'm going to be opening that week for sure. Then we have Infinity Ultron. He's going to be releasing with Cannonball and Pixie. Both of these are fun cards. They're not the most optimal in the best decks right now, but Pixie's one of my favorite cards just to play, and Cannonball is really good in Clog. So, and plus, I mean, Infinity Ultron looks like he's going to be insane. Then we have the Strange Supreme, and we don't unfortunately have any art, but US Agent and Speed. So 2 cards that I think might have been skipped by a lot of people as they weren't the most flashy, but are very good cards. So I'm guessing a lot of people might be opening that week. And finally, the Hydra Stomper releasing with Aranya and Madam Web. And this is a great Spotlight Cache because both of these are move cards. So if you're playing Hydra Stomper, if you're looking to play a move deck and you're missing, the most recent move cards, Madam Web and Aranya, well, they're all in 1 week for you. Really hope this continues out. But that is going to do it then for this video. Hopefully this wasn't too long. If this is like an hour-long video, I'm going to have to rethink some things. But like I said, keep an eye out for my breaking down the next 6 months of Snap video. I'm going to hopefully be getting that out sometime by the end of next week. And until then, enjoy some great gameplay video. I'm always posting gameplay videos, breaking down some new decks. And I'll see you guys all in the next video.